Human rights abuses, crimes against humanity, the murder of a culture, the largest incarceration of a minority since the Holocaust, China's assault on Uyghurs has been called a lot of things. But here's the best way to describe what's happening in Beijing, in Xinjiang. China is committing a genocide. In the last 7 years, more than 1 million Uyghurs have suffered. We have heard their horror stories, we have seen China's concentration camps, and yet the world has failed to stop the genocide in Xinjiang. World powers and global institutions hesitate to punish Chinese leaders. And those who try are branded as enemies of the state. Tonight, we have irrefutable proof of the crimes committed by the Communist Party of China. The top Chinese leadership ordered this genocide. For the first time, we have access to top secret papers, leaked documents that establish how Xi Jinping himself ordered this genocide on Uyghurs. On Gravitas tonight, we'll tell you about the Xinjiang papers. First, let's tell you why this leak is significant. The Xinjiang papers are a definitive, behind-the-scenes account. How the genocide began, what were the closed-door conversations, and what did Xi Jinping tell his officials to do? The papers establish what the world has long known. The orders came from the Chinese president. No surprises there. Everything in China flows from the top. What's shocking is the extent of the brutality, even by Chinese standards. It was horrid. Let me now show you what the papers say. The most damaging revelations are the speeches of Xi Jinping, the president of China. The text of 3 speeches has been leaked. These are from April 2014. The Chinese president addressed senior Communist Party leaders. What did he tell them? We have accessed some papers and some parts of the speeches. Allow me to read out for you what Xi Jinping said. Xi Jinping himself telling his officials to go after Uyghurs. And I'm quoting, "Those who should be seized, and those who should be sentenced. We propose that Xinjiang is currently in a painful period of interventionary treatment." Basically, the Chinese president is comparing the Uyghurs to a disease, something that needs to be treated. Here's what else he said. "Population proportion and population security are important foundations for long-term peace and stability." What does that mean? It means that Xi Jinping is suggesting that the share of Han Chinese is low in Xinjiang. Now, Han Chinese are the majority ethnic group in China. But in the province of Xinjiang, the Han Chinese are a minority. And President Xi Jinping wanted to change that. He wanted to fix that. Earlier, the Uyghurs were not subjected to the one-child policy in China. They were allowed to have more children than the Han Chinese. President Xi Jinping reversed those orders. Birth control policies were imposed on Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Local Communist Party officials were given targets. They were told to achieve, quote-unquote, long-term effective birth prevention. In simple English, they were told to stop Uyghur families from having more children. In fact, Xi Jinping wanted to dictate every aspect of the lives of Uyghurs. Senior Communist Party officials delivered on every demand. Here are some of the statements they made, and these are also part of the same set of leaked documents. Let me read out for you what a party secretary told officials. "Round up all who should be rounded up in Xinjiang. Re-education camps are to be, quote-unquote, unswervingly operated for a long time. The state should show," and I'm quoting, "the state should show absolutely no mercy towards its enemies." Who are the enemies? The Uyghurs. There are 12 million Uyghurs in China, and the government declared them enemies and went after them. The leaked documents reveal how they did it. Many of these documents had a secret or a top secret classification. Nonetheless, the papers were leaked. The Great Wall of secrecy around China is porous. Revelations like these do get out eventually. Now, here's a question. Why did the Communist Party of China try to hide these papers? For obvious reasons. We can give you 2. The first one, like I said, is obvious. China wanted to avoid international scrutiny. This planned genocide does not reflect well on them. Reason number 2 is related to Xi Jinping's pet project, the Belt and Road Initiative. The Chinese president saw the Uyghurs as a threat. In one of his speeches, he said that the Belt and Road Initiative needs a quote-unquote, a stable domestic security environment. He was referring to the separatist movement in Xinjiang. He wanted stability. The separatists pose a threat to the Communist Party and its control on mainland China. So to crush some separatists, Beijing unleashed a crackdown on the entire Uyghur population in the country. There is no end to Beijing's paranoia and suspicion. The Communist Party is obsessed about internal security, so much so that China's internal security budget is higher than its military budget. Anything that is even a remote threat needs to be taken down, according to them. The Uyghurs are one example. Journalists are another. The province of Henan is putting journalists under surveillance. The authorities plan to deploy face scanning technology. Journalists will be constantly tracked through this. Once they're identified, they will be sorted into 3 different categories. This is what China is doing. Listen to this. 3 different categories of journalists: green, amber, and red. Officials in Henan call this the traffic light system to track journalists. Green, amber, red. What does it mean? If a journalist is tagged as green, it means they're not a threat. Amber means a potential threat, someone who needs to be watched. And the color red is obvious. Journalists in the red category would be, quote unquote, dealt with accordingly. That's what documents from the Henan province say. So we have 2 provinces in China and 1 story. China's paranoid dictator and his quest for absolute control. Genocide in one state, surveillance in another. The Communist Party has been in control of China for 72 years now. And in all these years, the party has flip-flopped on many policy positions. But it has been consistent about one thing: its ruthless pursuit to maintain power and keep control of the Chinese state. The crackdown on Uyghurs and journalists are manifestations of the same paranoia. Those who continue to ignore this and still remain in business with Beijing are accomplices to China's crimes. They're all guilty of backing a genocidal regime.